Good evening and welcome. Monday night. What date are we on? The 6th of April. And 2 weeks tonight, our country was put into lockdown and things have dramatically changed within 2 weeks. So, been doing some vlogs and we've completed in an evening, we've completed the 12 steps. And what I'd like to talk about tonight is learning to live in the 12th step. Learning to live from that perspective. So the 12th step is where we've, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts, as alcoholics or users, but I like to think of this step as having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to anyone that's in despair and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And what does it mean? Well, from my perspective, and it's, as I say, it's only mine, as we journey from acceptance to giving, and the journey of sobriety, or as I like to call it, the freedom, journey into freedom. Each day that passes, we gain traction and connection and ourselves, a community into a higher power. When this higher power is felt, the gratitude we feel in our heart is expansive, and living in the gratitude creates a greater opportunity for grace to work in our lives. As I mentioned before, the hormone oxytocin is released, and it's a very powerful hormone, and it's secreted within the pituitary gland. It's sometimes known as the love hormone, because it's released when you get close to someone, or sorry, I've just got a message there, when you get close to somebody, or when you socially bond, okay? So I could go off tangent there. So this week, keep getting messages, sorry. 2 weeks has passed. We've been put into lockdown. The word unprecedented, I'd had no idea what that meant until this point, and we've never seen a time like this. We haven't seen a time like this, and in a lot of ways what I'm noticing, that yes, there is a lot of fear, that I am not denying, and there's a massive amount of anxiety, and yes, I'm seeing that as well, but I'm also seeing a lot more of what I'm going to go on and talk about a solution here, is certainly for me, when I'm asking someone how they are, I'm noticing that I mean it. And I thought that when I asked someone how they were before, I thought that I meant it. But until I'm doing it from this new perspective, I get to see the contrast and get to see how much more I'm really entering in towards that other person and giving to them, just in a... But there's an old saying, that's a friend of mine, and I don't think he knew I was going online, and he sent me about 3 messages there. There's an old saying that the more you give, the more you get. The irony with that is, if you've heard it or experienced it as truth, then what we have to watch out for in this dynamic is that we do not start to get caught up in what I call giving to get. And it's where you give away to have an emotional need met within ourselves. That's the dark side of the giving. And it's very manipulative. We give in order to get. We give our stuff away in order to get emotional needs met. It's very codependent. And it's not to fall into that trap when we start giving altruistically for those that are willing to look at solutions that could be helpful for the coming weeks and months even. However, the more altruistic we give, or where there's no strings attached, the clearer we are, then the more the feelings are reciprocated, if that makes sense. There was a motivational speaker, Zig Ziglar, put it really well. He summed it up when he said, "You will get all you want in life when you help other people get what they want." And that's a really lovely thing. You will get what you want in life when you help other people get what they want. Now, most people want freedom, okay? So if you had the blueprint or the cheat sheet if you had a cheat sheet, would you use it? Would you want to excel through this game faster, or do you want to stay in level 1, level 2, or whatever? Do you want to progress through the levels of this this reality that we have, and it's we seem to be stuck in level 1, and there's so many other levels to it. So the joy of living becomes the theme. So when we start to live in step 12, the joy of life starts to become the theme, and that's the place that we're running from. Here we turn outward towards other members of the human race who are in distress. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to be people that are in recovery, that are alcoholics. If you had been through a divorce and you had lived through the hell of it, and the arguments and the fights over kids and over money, and the darkness that you've experienced, and then you managed to get through that, and you had heard that somebody else down the street was going through a divorce and they'd never experienced that before, who do you think would appreciate your help, right? So it's starting to be able to share what we've learned with other people, because it's almost like, Kevin Bridges is a phenomenal comedian, but when you actually go and see him, it's all things that we've thought before, and that's why he's so funny. So he's actually not any different than us in the content of what goes on in his mind and how he sees the world. The ability that he has is he has an ability to deliver what's inside his head in a manner that's understood by the audience, and that's what makes him so popular. And if we can find our way, because if you've went through pain and somebody else is going through pain, pretty much it's going to be the similar type thing. Now, whatever way we've had an awakening, spiritual awakening, or just an awakening that I'm not going to live like that any longer, right? We then start to give it. So here we experience the kind of giving that asks no rewards. Here we begin to practice all we've learned through our experiences in life, and where we have been to hell and returned. The principles of what's worked for you, and that living that in our daily lives, so that we and those around us may find emotional sobriety. Now, emotional sobriety can be from anything. It can be from the torture of our own minds. It can be from the torture of our thinking. It could be drugs. It could be alcohol. It could just be the way that you're living. So, hi Nadia. Now, when we begin to live in service for others, and it is seen in its full implication, it is really talking about the kind of love that doesn't have a price tag. You can't put a price tag on what it feels like when you start to give these kind of things. There's many definitions of spiritual awakening, as there is the amount of people that have had them. Everybody's jumping about right now saying they're awake. Now, if you were awake or awakened, you wouldn't tell somebody you were awake or you were awakened, because it wouldn't matter. Because when you get into a place of awakening, you break free from duality. So therefore, you're not able to measure anything. Nothing would have any measurability, because you would be in a place that would, vibrationally and frequency wise, it would be at a completely different dimension. So people that tell you, have to tell you, and even in the 12 steps, I've been sober 3 years or 5 years, or I've done 500 meetings, or I've done 90 meetings in 90 days, and then somebody will go, aye, but I've done 92 meetings in 90 days, and Reiki or following, you know, people come on and have to tell you, I've been juicing for 20 years, and I've been doing that, and, you know, I've been following this and following that, and I've done 300 days of this, and I'm a master of that, and I'm a master of the next thing, and really? And now there's people jumping about saying that they are woke, W-O-K-E. I find it funny, because if that's where you were, you would have absolutely no need to tell anyone that's where you were. It would just be. So there are many people who have spiritual awakenings, and there's many different types to have. When we've had the spiritual awakening, the most important meaning is to that we now become able to do, feel, believe, and that our heart has bloomed, and because of this we have a strength from a higher power that allows us to give ourselves freely, and we function from a new state of consciousness and being. Now notice I never said a higher state of consciousness, it's simply a new state of consciousness, because the dualistic mind and duality wants us to talk about things as being higher or lower, fat or thin, rich or poor, man or woman, sun or moon. And we think that the sun and we think that the moon are very separate, but when you step out beyond this reality and go in a spacecraft and you look at them, you get to see them perfectly following one another round about Earth, as if they're in some kind of invisible string. Now, what we're starting to learn through this time of lockdown, that a lot of us are starting to learn that connection is more important than any of the external trappings that we had, and the things that we thought we owned we're now starting to realise own us. So we're starting to gain a new set of consciousness and create new sets of constructs, but not without its pain, which will set us on a path now where we are going somewhere, rather than where our life starts to gain traction and starts to move in a completely different direction. And that hi Dutchie, good evening. And that life need not be lived under the shadows of darkness, because when you start to function from this perspective, we're running in solar power now instead of engine oil, and utilising the power of that sun, of that source, of that strength which we have denied ourselves. We are now in possession of honesty and tolerance and selfishness and peace, and a peace of mind and love which we'd had believed prior to where we were. We never thought we'd have been capable of this, and we start to feel this. The gifting of sorry, I'm distracted with my emails. The gift of awakening does not come for free. It came as the direct result of full immersion in our suffering. When we become willing to feel our suffering rather than mask it, we become open to salvation. For 12-steppers, it's obviously working the steps. For others, this could be working with a therapist or a coach, where we've been held accountable for our behaviours, and we start to burn through our unconscious blocks and seeing the pain of our past. You know, a true test of character is what we do when no one's watching. And so many people want to be seen for what they're doing. And that's a trap as well. So we're 2 weeks in. We may have another 2 weeks to go. We may have another 2 months to go. On my walks, my limited walks and limited time that I have to spend with people because of the rules that are in place, the conversation. Stephen Snedden putting his thumb up. Do you like this, Stephen? So is this okay, Stephen, Mr. Snedden? It would be second in getting questions. It would be very interesting if you could do a chat on codependency at some point. Sure, certainly. Not a problem. I've got heaps of Melanie Beattie's books. She's great. I've got loads of other books. So yeah, we're 2 weeks in. We could be another 2 weeks in. We could be another 2 months in. Nobody knows. I don't know. I don't have any control over that. So I just have to let that go. And for me, a coach once told me. He said, you know, when you go financially bankrupt, you were emotionally bankrupt before you went monetary and lost the money. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And it's like an addict. When you pick up, you have a line you picked up long before, weeks, maybe even days, weeks before you actually took that line. You don't relapse. The relapse isn't the line, the needle, the bottle. That's not the relapse. The relapse is, and it happens a long time before. It might have been an argument that caused it, but that's the trigger, and that lights the fuse. The fuse is burning, and the dynamite at the other end is when you hit the substance, because at that point it's a train wreck. But the people that I'm speaking with just in my walks, when, like other dog walkers and people like that, the consensus is I'm hearing a lot of, oh, I'm getting fed up now. I'm fed up now. I'm fed up now, right? And what's starting to happen, or what could be starting to happen to people, is they've caught up with the gardening. It was all good. It was good fun. It's being about the house, getting quite into it now. But now another wave of feelings is coming up that they need to that we're experiencing. It comes out as, oh, we're fed up. And what, like what you just said about basing your recovery on what we do when no one is watching. And thank you, Stephen. And what we're coming up with is a country that could be potentially bankrupt. That's a very valid. I'm watching the news. 115 billion's being printed a day right now, and I'm no economist, and I'm not that interested in the Financial Times or indeed current affairs. But I've started to take a very good look, because I think when all things are going on, what I want to be watching is where the money is going, and follow the money, and you'll follow the person. So follow the theme. So if that amount of money is being printed from a point of economy, that is going to completely and utterly devalue currency. To what extreme? I don't know, because we've never seen 115 billion being printed every day right now. So that's very unprecedented. The world as we currently know it could be changing. It could be changing dramatically. Now, it might not. It might just go back to how it was. But the other thing that's happened as we've started to reflect in this time is, do we actually want it to go back to how it was? Are we starting to have realisations about the way that we were working wasn't working? Are you having those kind of thoughts? Are you starting to see that you don't know who you are without your job? Are you starting to see that you don't have any meaning, any purpose? You felt the work, your job, driving into work, the way that you got dressed, putting on the clothes, going into that role, wearing that hat, has been taken and stripped away, and you're finding it very difficult to be with who you are without the meaning that was placed upon your external events that you were using in order to keep safe. And now that safety net's been taken away. But what if all those safety nets were to be taken away for longer, for another 2 months? If this is where we're at in 2 weeks, what do you predict it's going to be like in a further 2 weeks? Because I don't know. But what I do know is that the selfish, disconnected, almost in a trance of the way that I was functioning is not working. And I'm going to inquire internally more about what that could mean for me, and I would encourage you to do the same. I am going to continue more talking about this in the morning. This kind of fell through, and I'm going to answer some of the questions that were there if they were questions, and if not, I'll be on in the morning again. So that was take time to look within, Nadia. Absolutely, I think. And that's scary, and that's why when I started off, Nadia, talking about this last week, that's been 1 week in to my challenge, and that's where the shadows live. When we start to look within, that's where the dark part of us is, because the roles and the suits and the masks and the cars and the job that was giving us meaning that we no longer have, they were another distraction from actually going into the unconscious, going into the mind where the taboos and the shadows start to live. The shadows are predatory behaviours. Those I've spoke about this before as well, but now that people are going inside, they're actually starting to hear the noise of the radio that's in there, and there's a lot of people, certainly within the recovery community, I've spoke to at least probably 3 that spoke about having fantasies of looting and robbing, and those thoughts haven't come into their mind for a long time. So when you start, for a lot of people, and then there's anger and falling out with their partners, that's a running theme with clients that I'm working with online, and predominantly the women are falling out with the men. The main clients are you keep what you have by giving it away has meaning in so many forms. So Nadia, yeah, the not everything is sugar and light, and we've all been avoiding the dark days for so long, and it's a bit Old Testament, but the only way to the Lord is through suffering. And in our darkest moments, if we're able to be in that moment, a lot of people report having a sense that they were lifted up out of the darkness and they had a hand placed upon them. Some people might call that God, the Holy Spirit, whatever. Or it was the brain shutting down to such an extent that when it opened up it was rebooted and felt better. I've got no way of knowing. I like to think of it spiritually because I am. And yeah, that's what I think on that, Nadia, if that makes sense. You keep what you have by giving it away has many meaning in many forms. Thank you, Stephen. Well, that's a wee half hour for tonight. I've very much enjoyed sharing this conversation with you. It has been interesting, and I only wish that we couldn't do a live one. I don't see why we couldn't, but do a live, it's probably very ethically wrong, but doing a live one where everybody got on live, and those that had the courage to come on live and speak about how it is that they're feeling, because I know that from being in the meeting rooms and listening to so many people's stories, like Kevin Bridges, everybody's experienced it inside their head, but they've never actually had the courage or the strength to communicate that with another human being. So they've got that locked up inside them, that secret's locked up inside them, and that's keeping them very, very stuck. And if we are going to evolve into a new way of being, into a new consciousness and how to live in a community and amongst ourselves, then we can't have any secrets. We've got to make what's unseen seen, and seen before our higher power, and placed down before our higher power, and live step 12 and start giving. Start giving all you can from a place of love. Now, I will speak to you tomorrow morning for those that are interested at about 7 o'clock. I'm not pragmatic in the mornings. I get out the house when I get out the house. So thanks for listening. I hope that's been helpful, and have a great night, what's left of it, and I will speak to you tomorrow.